What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. And look what decided to show up on my doorstep this afternoon. This is the new NATASHA DENONA Pastel palette. If you guys are interested in a full review, swatches, and demo of this palette, and you want to know all of my thoughts and whether or not it is worth your hard-earned money, then keep watching. Before we get into it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Sophia. This is my channel where I talk about all things beauty and makeup, especially new luxury beauty releases. So if that is something that you would like to see more of in your feed, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would love to have you as a part of my community. All right, friends, let's talk about this newest palette from NATASHA DENONA. It is called the Pastel Palette, and as you can see, the packaging is absolutely gorgeous. It's so stunning. It's kind of like a delicious, like candy pastel ombre sunset dream. I am loving it, and this is in the midi size. If you guys are not familiar with the palettes from NATASHA DENONA, she has a couple of different sizes. She has like her little mini ones, she has her 5 pans, and then the larger palettes that she makes come in this size, which is called the midi size, and then also the standard size. So I will kind of show you guys the difference here. This is the Circo Loco palette from NATASHA, and you'll see right here the midi size, it's definitely smaller, and you'll see in the pan size as well. The pan sizes are also considerably smaller. Now, there's also a very big difference in the prices of these, because these palettes typically go for over $100, usually about $129, $130, whereas this palette retails for $65. So I really tend to prefer this size, and I think the general consumer does as well, because it's just like a little bit more manageable. You're still getting a lot of colors, but guys, we really don't go through eyeshadow that quickly, especially colorful tones. At least I don't. And so I really appreciate this midi size. I really appreciate the price point. It's a little bit more accessible to the average consumer. And so we have seen NATASHA launching a lot more of this size palette as well as the mini palettes. Now, obviously you can see here, this is called the Pastel palette, and the shades, they are pastel. It is a beautiful array of different pastel tones, and this comes with a couple of different formulas in it. So first off, we have the cream to powder formula. This is a matte formula, and you'll see in the swatches how these apply via swatch, and then also in the demo how these apply to the eyes. But the cream to powder formula, you definitely have a couple of them in here. I think you have about 4 or 5 of this formula. It's definitely very powdery. It's definitely very blendable. I want to just call out that there are several of these types of formula in this palette, because I know a lot of people, they don't get along very well with this type of formula. They find it a little bit patchy, a little bit hard to work with. Personally, in my experience, I've found it to be just fine, but I think that these shades, they're more for a softer look. They're very blendable, and so you'll kind of see in the demo, I'll show you kind of the best way to work with these shades, and you'll get a sense of how much depth you can create with the particular tones that are in this palette. Now, you also get just kind of like her traditional matte formula, which is a lot powderier and a little bit more pigmented than the cream to powder. You also have kind of like a standard metallic, and then what's also really interesting about this palette is you have several duochromes. I did not realize this when I looked at the promo photos and when I was just kind of seeing the marketing for this particular product, but when I actually looked at the back, I was sort of shocked to see several duochromes in this palette. And you'll see in the swatches just like how duochromy they are, but I will say just right off the bat, guys, these are not like indie brand duochromes. They're very soft, they're very wearable, they have a slight shift, which I honestly really appreciate. Now, this is not the first colorful palette that we've seen from NATASHA DENONA. Last year, she launched what I just showed you, which is the Circo Loco palette. This is obviously in a bigger size. It obviously has deeper tones, brighter tones. It's a little bit more wild. It's a little bit more like punchy and fun, whereas obviously she's hitting us up this spring with these pastel tones. So the two palettes, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time comparing these. I just want to show you kind of right off the bat, they are very different experiences, and I'm really excited that NATASHA DENONA has come out with this palette, particularly because a lot of the other palettes that she's launched recently have have been a lot more neutral. They've been like neutral browns and pinky tones. And honestly, guys, like I just want something different and a little bit more creative from Natasha. So that's what really excited me about this palette. Now, this palette, as I mentioned, retails for $65, which is still a lot of money. And I realize that's a lot of money for kind of like a colorful palette if color is not something that you use too often, but it is a more accessible price point than her larger palettes. And you can buy these from a couple of different retailers. I pre-ordered this on the NATASHA DENONA website. I know that it's going to be dropping, I believe, March 15th on other retailers, and it's going to be just kind of available to the regular public on that date. So you can get this at the NATASHA DENONA website. It's going to be at Sephora. It's going to be at Beautylish, and if I can find it anywhere else, you bet I will link it down below. This product is also made in Italy, which is always good. We know we always get really great luxury formulas from Italy, and it has a 24-month shelf life. Now that we have all those basic product details out of the way, let's dive into some swatches and a demo. Okay, party people, let's kick off the swatches of this gorgeous new pastel palette from NATASHA DENONA. I just want to show you guys real quick up close. This is the packaging. This is so pretty. I love this. It just reminds me of, like, I don't know, cotton candy sunset. It is so beautiful. So what I'm going to do here, guys, is just swatch all of the shades on my arm in order. First row, second row, third row. Let's get into it. First, we have Tulle, and this is a cream to powder matte. Next, we have Illusion, which is a duochrome, and I just want to show you guys that on the tip of my finger because I think that's the easiest way to be able to see that duochrome shift. And here is Illusion swatched on my arm. Mint Frost, a metallic. Bora, another cream to powder matte. Dainty, a duochrome shimmer. Now, I don't really see the duochrome so much in this. It does kind of seem like perhaps it is like a duochrome between pink and almost kind of like a silvery gold. It is very multi-dimensional though. Brisk, a creamy matte. Adriatic, which is a bright turquoise and gold duochrome. Starlet, another duochrome of coral and golden peach. Bellini, this is a creamy matte and it is a pastel peach. Bubble, a cream to powder, and that is a cornflower blue. Limoncello, this is an icy yellow in a metallic finish. Duet, a lilac and teal duochrome. Airy, a sky blue matte. I feel like that needs a little bit more. Let's get a little more on there. There we go. So that one doesn't have quite as much pigment, we will note. Zest, a cream to powder lime. And finally, we have Feather, which is another matte shade, and that is a pastel purpley pink. So those are all of our swatches. You can kind of see the duochrome shifts of a couple of these, and that is all the swatches in their totality. Now what I'm going to do is just swatch a couple of these grouped together by color story so you guys can kind of see and appreciate the differences between some of the shades. Let's start off with all of the pinks that are in this palette. Okay, so here we have Tulle, Dainty, Duet, and Feather, okay? And so you can see here we've got two different mattes, one that is a little bit more, well, definitely more of like a bubblegum pink. This one is definitely more of a lilac. And then we have kind of more of like a standard pink, and then right here, Duet. You can really see here in the light kind of just the differences between those two. This definitely has a teal shift, and you can appreciate its duochrome nature a lot more when you have it up against these other pink shades. I'm also gonna add Starlet in here. It's definitely more of a coral, but hopefully you can kind of just see the difference between these. It's very much a kind of reddish deeper coral, and it is listed as a duochrome, which it's honestly, guys, it's very subtle, but it does have a beautiful kind of like gold sparkly shift to it. It is really pretty. I would say that the duochromes that are in this palette, they aren't too in your face. They're not super poppy and noticeable like with maybe some of the indie brand duochromes, but I do think that they look very wearable, and I think that they're going to be very easy to work with on the eyes, so we'll check that out in the demo. Now let's go in with the blue tone shades. First off, we have Mint Frost, Brisk, and Adriatic. So all of these are in kind of the same color family. I think that using these together would be very safe. If you're kind of nervous about mixing these different tones together, you can always start off by sticking within the same color family. That's why I like to swatch these in sort of like groups for you guys, so you can kind of imagine how you might build looks if you get a little bit overwhelmed by just the variety of colors that are in these types of palettes. So right here, you can kind of appreciate the differences between, what is this, Mint Frost and Adriatic. This one is a lot more green in tone, and this one is definitely more of, well, it's a mint frost. I think that's a really great name for it. Now let me add in some of the more like bluer toned ones, because these definitely lean a little bit more on like the turquoise side. Okay, so now we have Bubble and we have Airy. Okay, Airy is the one that doesn't have a ton of pigment. That's really the only one I'm having trouble with swatching. But right here, you can see with Bubble, this one is definitely, it's a cornflower blue. If you wanted to take this look in more of a blue direction, you could really layer in these two mattes. And given that this one's a lot lighter, it kind of seems like Airy is going to be more of like a blending shade. So if you were really drawn to this shade, just know it is very, very light. I feel like it's going to be just better for blending and not really for building any kind of color on the eye. Next, I have the colors that are a little bit lighter, more in sort of like the yellow and green tone family. So we have Illusion, we have Limoncello, and we have Zest, okay? And you can really, really see here with Illusion just that beautiful shift that it has. I think that's going to be an amazing topper shade, great for the inner corner. That's the kind of thing that I like to put right in the center of the eye. And then both of these shades together, I think would actually make a fantastic look. Limoncello is a repeat shade from, I believe, the Tropic palette. It's one of my favorite shades in that particular palette. So these are the lighter tone shades that kind of go more in like that yellow to green category. Finally, I have Bora and Bellini, which I didn't feel like fit in any of these categories. I suppose you could pair like the Bellini with maybe like the peaches or the pinks, and same with Bora. I mean, it's purple, but they don't really fit into like one clear color family to me in this palette. But again, you don't have to do your look by color family. That's just kind of how I like to swatch things, so you guys can really pull apart the different types of colors that are in this palette. Okay guys, so I hope that that was helpful. And now we're gonna hop into the demo and see how these perform on my eyes. Okay friends, let's get into a quick demo of this pastel palette. If you are new here, I tried to film in as much natural light as possible. Now I got this palette this morning and it is now getting to be like a little bit later in the day, so you probably will see the sun shifting just a little bit, but just know this is natural light, so I try to really show you guys the true nature of these colors on my eyes. I'm gonna be doing, I think, one look on this eye, one look on that eye. I don't have anything planned. I like to kind of just go into this and do, you know, organically what I would do as like an everyday makeup wear, and something that I think is going to be easy for you to recreate as well. So let's get into it. I think I want to start off with like a pinky peach look. So I'm just going to start off with maybe the lightest color right here, which is called Feather, and pop that into the crease with my BK Beauty 201 brush. This is one of those just standard like creamy matte formulas that Natasha has, and it's blending out very, very well. This shows up, I think, very well on my skin. If you have a darker skin tone, this might need to be more of like a blending shade, but for me, it's perfectly sufficient to kind of just start off a look and add like a nice little wash of color. I really want to test out the duochromes in this palette, because I think that this is probably one of the main appeals and areas of differentiation for this palette. So I'm gonna go into Duet with a shader brush, and this is a BK Beauty 203. That looks good. I just wanna show you guys how this palette could be incredibly wearable, because I think we look at this and we think that it looks pretty crazy, but if you break the colors down like I did in the swatches into the color family, you could see how this would be an absolutely stunning look. And I think that there's something just a little bit different with the duochrome, but it's a very wearable duochrome. I think all the duochromes in here, none of them are like that crazy, and because they're pastel, they're very light, okay? They're very soft, so I think it adds like a really beautiful hint of brightness to the eyes. So that is Duet on my lid. I really want to dip into some of these cream to powder formulas because there are quite a few in this palette. And I know that this particular formula sometimes is a little bit hard to work with. So I'm going to be going into Tool right here. And here I've got a BK Beauty 206 brush. This is basically just kind of like a fluffy blender brush. And I think this is going to be good because these particular shadows, they're very, very powdery. And I think that they're supposed to be very blendable. And I think using this type of brush that allows you to kind of just like place it very carefully, but also blend it is the best way to not have these be too patchy. I think that that's good. I think the main thing here is that you can't really count on these to build up too much depth. I don't think that this is a palette where like your goal is to get a lot of depth because it is a pastel palette. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not really sure if you had darker skin tone, how this might work for you, but for me, it seems to be blending extremely seamlessly. What I want to do now is try a darker shade and see how that works out. So I'm gonna go into this shade right here, Bora, which is also a cream to powder formula. I'm using that same brush and we're just gonna see how much we could add in there in terms of depth, like if anything. Okay. It's honestly, it's very blended. It's very seamless. Like I like this kind of look, but it's not gonna be that kind of matte where you can go in and you can really like create a sculpted outer V, at least not with this brush. Let me try with a more precise brush. So here I got a Sonia G Worker 3. Let's try this. Okay, that helps a bit. That's quite beautiful, honestly. I really like the look of Bora. This is what it looks like in the pan, but then on the eye, see how it's just, it really comes out a lot softer, which for me, I like that because I'm looking for this palette to be something that honestly is more for daytime. Yeah, I think that looks really pretty. Let's go in with Dainty on the lower lash line and just kind of brighten things up. I'm using a Rephr number 3 to do this and just get a very precise application because this particular shadow, it's a little bit crumbly. Not in a bad way, it just has a lot of shimmer in it. So you just want to apply it very precisely. I don't foresee having like a ton of fallout. This is very similar to other Natasha Denona shades. I'm gonna go back into Bora and I'm now gonna put that on the bottom lower half right here. Now that I know this shade, I don't really like need to be afraid of it. I can just kind of like drag that down there. Ooh, I like. I really want to use this shade Illusion because it looks so pretty. So I'm just going to take that on my finger right here and dab it on the center of the eye. I know we already have a duochrome on the center of the eye, but this shade just looks so cool. So you can really see that reflect. I think this looks like a very wearable look. If I saw, you know, somebody wearing this, I wouldn't think that it looked too crazy, too colorful. I know that Natasha, she likes to kind of color block all of these, but in reality, guys, like I'm not really doing that often, or I'm only maybe doing it with 2 colors. I don't have like 6 colors like color blocked on my eye. And I know a lot of you guys are like that too. So I really wanted to show you something that is wearable. All right, so that is the look on this eye. Now I'm gonna start the look on this eye using more of like the bluer, greener, and yellower tones. Taking my BK Beauty 201, I'm gonna go in with this color Brisk in the crease. My cat's popping in and out. She's awake from her nap. Hi, Minnie. Ooh, this is such a fun, like minty color. Very pastel-y, very blendable. This is like so much pigment. Like I'm getting so much, I don't know if you guys can see that, so much like kickback in the pan. It doesn't really bother me, but I just want to mention that it can be just like a little bit messy. This is so blendable. And honestly, I feel like I've seen this from a lot of other pastel colored shadows from other brands. Brisk is a regular like creamy matte. It's not a cream to powder. So I guess just keep that in mind. This is like, it's definitely more of a powder formula, whereas the cream to powder, it's a little bit, it's definitely like a different texture. So that's why this one has just like so much kick up in the pan. Taking my BK Beauty 203 shader brush, we gotta go into Adriatic, guys. We need to. This color looks amazing. It's incredibly creamy in the pan. Like unlike this one here, what was it, Dainty, which kind of was like a little bit chunky. This one is not like that. It is definitely creamier. Oh. The sun is kind of like going down, so you guys have a perfect view right here of just how gorgeously shimmery that is. Ooh, I think that is stunning. I love that. I love it, guys. Let's go into this color, Airy, and put that on the bottom lash line. Once again, with my reference number 3, I'm just applying that. And this one is also very, very powdery. It makes it very easy to blend. Just kind of showing you guys what that looks like in the sun. Let's go into Bubble right here with my BK Beauty 206. By the way, guys, I love these BK Beauty brushes. I will put down below a code if you guys are interested in these brushes. I think it saves you about 10%, so I'll link that down below, just mentioning it here now. Okay, so this is Bubble. It definitely shows up. I'm impressed that like these cream to powders, they're actually showing up when you layer them over some of the other colors here. I feel like I kind of struggled with this type of shadow when I was using the Zendo palette. And I think the reason for that is honestly because those shadows were just so, they were opposite colors. It was very hard to kind of like pair them together. Whereas these, I feel like, especially if you stick within the color family, you're just, you don't run into a situation where your look is getting super muddy. So I like that I can still see each individual color here, and then you can kind of blend them together if you so choose. Let's go into this gorgeous color right here, Mint Frost, and dab that on the center of the lid. This, ooh, oh, that's so pretty. I love that. You could put this all over the eye. I think all of these shimmers would be gorgeous all over the eye. If you didn't want something that was like, you know, this complicated, I think that would look really good. I'm also putting a little bit of Mint Frost in the inner corner because it was so gorgeous. And I think that that makes the perfect inner corner color. This color also, just like Adriatic, is very, very creamy. Actually, you know what? I think it's a little bit similar to Dainty. I find that all of these shimmers went on incredibly, incredibly smooth. All right, friends, so these are the 2 looks. I am now going to put on some mascara so you can see what these look like so everything can come together, and I'll be right back. And I'm back. All right, guys, so I put on the Rare Beauty mascara, just 2 coats of that. I didn't want to put on any eyeliner because I really want you guys to see the full effect of the colors and the shimmers here. Like, this is stunning. I think that these are beautiful. I had so much fun making these, and I thought that these looks were very, very easy to make. You can really see the subtle duochromes here. But again, if you're looking for something that is like super impactful duochromes, I don't think you're gonna get it from this palette, but I think, you know, the demonstration speaks for itself. I had absolutely no trouble creating these looks at all. So I hope that that demo was helpful. Now let's get into my final thoughts. Woo! Okay, friends, let's get into my final thoughts of what I think of this gorgeous pastel palette from NATASHA Denona. If you guys can tell already, I really like this palette. I really like this palette. I did watch maybe 1 or 2 other reviews of this palette, and I've kind of heard around social media and the interwebs that some folks have had a little bit of trouble with this palette, or maybe they thought that the colors were not as pigmented or not as high quality as other products from NATASHA. And I just can only give my own honest opinion of my experience with this palette. I think that it's amazing. I think that it is very, very good quality. I didn't have problems with a single shade. I really didn't, guys. Like, nothing was chunky. Everything showed up. Everything was extremely blendable. I had such an easy time creating both of these looks. And I do my makeup like in the camera, in the viewfinder, guys. It's like I'm just doing my makeup in the camera, so it actually is a little bit harder for me to do these demos, and I had absolutely no issue doing it. That being said, what I think you guys need to take into account here is that these shadows are very light. It's a pastel palette, guys. Like, you're not gonna get a ton of depth from these, and that's kind of why I think this palette almost works really well for me, because I am very pale. I really enjoy light looks, especially for day. And I'm not really going to this palette to create anything smoky or anything with a lot of depth. I could definitely see myself, if I wanted to do so, I would probably dip into the Surco Loco palette or some of my Viseart palettes where I have a lot of different kind of deeper, colorful tones, but you're really not gonna find any shade in here that is super dark to create a lot of depth. I think that if you like shades that are sort of bright and soft and like a little bit icy and you love that type of reflection, I think you're really going to like this palette. I think everything is very blendable. The cream to powder shades in other palettes, I think the reason why sometimes they don't really work for me is because I'm trying to use them as a way to build up depth, whereas these in here, because everything is pastel, I almost feel like the cream to powder works really, really well for these types of colors because it's supposed to be soft, it's supposed to be blended. I'm not trying to like build up a really defined outer corner with them. And in addition, you know, kind of looking back to the Surco Loco palette, whether you have this palette or not, like my favorite shades in this palette are Aerialist and Snow Cone, the two like bright pastel shades. And so I almost feel like with this particular palette, Natasha's kind of giving me what were my favorite, most wearable shades in the Surco Loco, but in a cohesive palette. I don't really personally myself in my collection, I don't have a cohesive pastel palette like this. I do have similar shades in some of my ColourPop palettes and in some of my Viseart palettes. I did kind of like go through my collection and try to figure out, do I have anything that's like somewhat similar? But I really don't have something that is quite like this. So for me, it is definitely worth the $65. But that being said, if you have maybe like a deeper skin tone or you are looking for something with like a little bit more depth, I don't think that this is going to be maybe the palette for you. Also, if you're looking for something that has like really intense duochromes, as I've mentioned like once or twice before in this video, you're not going to get that from this palette. These duochromes are very soft, but that being said, I think they're really gorgeous. I think they're really beautiful. Sometimes I find like really intense duochromes to be like a little bit hard to apply all over the eye. Like they sometimes get a little bit muddy with other mattes when I try and blend them together. And I just felt like this palette was really user friendly. Now, just kind of like some quick tips from me. If you get this palette, or maybe you have other colorful palettes in your collection and you just get like a little bit overwhelmed, what I do and what you guys saw in the demo is I like to, at least until I have like a really good feeling for every shade in the palette, I like to go by color family. I like to start off with like, okay, let's just do peaches, let's just do blues and greens, and kind of go about it that way. I think that's the way, at least for me and on like my pale skin tone, to create a more wearable look and something that I know isn't gonna get like something that's not gonna be a hot mess at the end of the day, okay guys? That's what I recommend to you, because I know most of you out there, you're not makeup artists, you're really just trying to look for something cute and pretty, and maybe you wanna feel like a little more fun and artistic and springy for the upcoming spring and summer season. Then I think going about it that way is gonna be really good. If you're going to be creating some of the looks similar to what Natasha Denona has on like her social media, she really likes to color block shadows together. And if you're going to do that, I think you're gonna have to use a little bit more of like precise brush, a little bit more of like a careful hand. And like for me, like I'm not really going for like a crazy look like that. I really want it to be like a little bit more blended. And so I think if you kind of stick with like just cool tones or just warm tones in this palette, you're going to be fine. I think it's really, really easy to work with. And I don't know, guys, I really like the quality of this and I'm so excited to keep using this for spring. So anyway, guys, please sound off in the comments down below and let me know what you thought of this palette. I put up a couple polls on my Instagram and you guys were very split about whether or not you were interested in this palette. It's like half of you were all about it and half of you were like hard pass. That's a skip, like that's not really for me. And I totally get it, guys. This isn't for everybody, but I'm really happy that Natasha Denona is kind of mixing up some releases that are really accessible to a lot of people and then some for those of us that like a little bit of color. So I think that that's great. There's something for everyone. So please sound off in the comments down below. Let me know how you got on with this palette if you end up getting it. Let me know if this review changed your mind, whether in one way or another. Please let me know, because your opinion is worth just as much as mine, and we all have different skin tones and skin types. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. And if you are still watching this video, maybe it means that you like the video, and maybe you should consider subscribing to my channel. I post every single week on all of the newest luxury beauty releases. I also have a lot of other fun content such as favorites and tag videos, and I would love to have you as a part of my community. I will also put up here my Instagram handle. We have a lot of fun over there. That is basically where I tell you guys what I'm buying. I do polls so you guys can let me know what you want to see next. I let you know about all of the best deals in the beauty community and on the interwebs. So if you guys want to connect with me a little bit more on the day-to-day, please consider following me on Instagram. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and that it was helpful for you, and I will see you guys in my next one. Goodbye.